Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons Iconics. All right, so what are the Dungeons & Dragons Iconics? The Dungeons & Dragons Iconics are specifically characters that are specific to Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. They were in Dungeons & Dragons 3.0. I'm going to talk about them from the perspective of 3.5. 3.5 is the primary catalyst there between the two different editions. 3.5 got a lot more traction than 3.0. People care about 3.5. Not a lot of people care about 3.0. All right. So specifically, the D&D Iconics are characters. They are specifically divided by class, right? It is an artistic choice. It is a game design choice, right? It is also a narrative choice within Dungeons & Dragons that is specifically unique to Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. It wasn't really used in any other edition. It really isn't. And that's pretty interesting and pretty fascinating, right? Now, to be clear, Pathfinder loved that idea, and Pathfinder also uses iconic characters, but they knocked it off from Dungeons & Dragons. It came from Dungeons & Dragons first, right? So let's talk about the D&D Iconics. So specifically, we're talking about specific characters that are named characters within Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, right? And we're going to talk today about what's good about them and what's bad about them, and how important they are in Dungeons & Dragons history, okay? Now, before we go any further, I want to talk today about why we're talking about this, and also kind of give you an idea of what the Iconics really did, right? The D&D Iconics. So I was going through my own personal collection recently, and I was looking at my the Forge of Fury. This is specifically an adventure that came into my collection through a larger purchase. I really don't buy adventures, right? But I bought some source books, and I got this within the collection, right? But I was looking the other day, and I looked at the cover of the Forge of Fury. The Forge of Fury is an early Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 adventure, okay? And it is its cover is absolutely stunning. It is really, really a beautiful cover, and it uses the D&D Iconics extremely well, right? So basically, on the cover of the Forge of Fury, there are 4 adventures, okay? There are 2 fighters, there's a halfling, and there are 2 fighters, there's a rogue and a wizard, right? So it's not your classic 4, there isn't a cleric in there. But the 2 fighters are Regdar and Tordik. Tordik is a dwarf fighter. Regdar is a human fighter. The wizard is Miley the elf, okay? And then finally you have Lida, and Lida is the halfling rogue, right? Now basically they are on a bridge, right? And they're trying to cross. They're deep in essentially like a ruined castle, right? And like there's kind of moonlight coming from above, right? And essentially they're sprawled out across on this bridge, and they're doing a few things at the same time. They're trying to cross the bridge. At the same time, these adventurers are fighting a black dragon, right? And this black dragon is swooping down, and as this black dragon is swooping down on them, very close to using its breath weapon, right? Regdar has his shield and his I think he's using a sword at the time, and he's getting ready to combat this black dragon. Miley, the wizard, is helping him. She's about to cast on the black dragon. What is Tordik doing? Tordik is actually, leaping, right, and grabbing Lida, the rogue, who's falling, about to fall, who has already fallen over a precipice. He is holding her by the arm, and she is dangling over this bridge that they're trying, this essentially broken bridge that they're trying to cross, right? It's everything that Dungeons & Dragons is in a single image. It is adventure, it is peril, it is danger, right? And it is the D&D Iconics, right? And so one of the things that's really neat about this is when you see this image, right, if you don't know who or what the Iconics are, it works, right? You see these D&D adventurers, and they're doing their thing, and that's all that somebody who's just coming, looking at the cover of the book needs to know. But if you know these iconics, right, Regdar has the same equipment in almost every cover he's on, right? Miley, she looks the same. Her gear is consistent, right? And it's the same thing with Tordek, the dwarf fighter, and all, and basically and Lida, the halfling rogue. So basically, these D&D iconics, unlike any other edition of the game, the iconics are the same throughout the books, right? And so whenever they're used in source books, adventure books, core rule books, or in boxes, and by the way, those are the components of print Dungeons and Dragons. Every single edition has had these core four categories, right? But basically, these iconics are used specifically in these books in this way, right? Now, what do you get when you use these? What is the benefit of using these iconics? Well, you can tell stories, right? You could tell a story of how these characters are using the skills, the spells, the artifacts, the magic items. All the elements of the game can be layered onto these D&D iconics, and they can be shown how these things are used, right? And there's a consistency, right? There's a little bit of a narrative story with these characters, but also there's a unity of example. There is a unity of example that comes with these D&D iconics, right? And so it's really quite unique. These D&D iconics really give players an anchor, right? And players and dungeon masters, when they look at Dungeons & Dragons 5, because you're seeing the same characters being used to show examples of the different elements of the games, of the locations of the games, of the not interacting with non-player characters within the different Dungeons & Dragons worlds, dealing with magical items, artifacts, things like that. You can see how these elements of Dungeons & Dragons work much better because you're familiar with these iconics. It's really, really fascinating, right? By the way, all the D&D iconics are organized by class. So every single base class has 1 to 3, specifically 1 to 3 iconics assigned to them, right? Some classes have multiple iconic characters, right? It's really quite interesting. Like Tordek and Regdar are both iconic fighters, so that class got multiples there. Now, what is the disadvantage? What is so you have the advantages is this unity of example, right? And it's almost like a visual scale, like that. Since you're familiar with the characters, it allows you to look at the example material that they're highlighting more closely, right? Because you're not, every time you see a new character within Dungeons & Dragons, you're not having to remap and say, who is this person, right? Like, you already know who Regdar is. You know who Tordek is. What is the disadvantages? Well, there is a disadvantage. It's quite unique. It's an unusual disadvantage. So what is the disadvantage of using iconics? Well, the disadvantage of using iconics is it limits the artists, right? So basically, if you have these iconics, and you are Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards of the Coast owned Dungeons & Dragons at this point. So Wizards of the Coast, they are connected to Magic the Gathering. They have some of the most talented artists in the whole world, right? They have Wayne Reynolds is a perfect example, right? Actually, Wayne Reynolds came on I think Wayne Reynolds did start working on. He started working in 3rd edition, and he really kind of hit his stride in 4th edition. But Wayne Reynolds is a brilliant dude, right? So he's a fantastic artist, right? So if you're doing D&D 3.5 and you have these iconics and you come to your next source book or your next adventure, you're going to tell Wayne Reynolds, hey, I want Miley here, I want Tordek here, and then when you say, hey, Tordek is here, Tordek wears a specific helmet. He wears not chainmail. He actually wears specifically like ring mail. So Tordek wears ring mail, right? And so you're going to be like, hey, draw Tordek. As soon as you say draw Tordek to Wayne Reynolds, right, you lock in what Tordek is carrying and what he's using, and like, he is iconic, right? You're not going to see Tordek with a bow, right? You're not going to see Tordek casting a spell, right? Like, basically, he doesn't multi-class, right? So basically, when you use iconics, you limit the artist. Also, Wayne Reynolds, brilliant guy, visual artist, right? He sees the world visually, right? And like this person, artists don't really process the world we do, right? They see colors in high contrast, right? And in many artists, they're almost like they live in almost like a dream state where they're perceiving the world in a way that I'll just use this term for simplicity's sake, but they see the world a little more different than not. You know what? I'll just say it this way: artists see the world differently than non-artistic people, right? They see things that we don't see. They see, they see colors we don't see. They see shadings. They see visual relationships and aspects in ways that we don't see, right? What if Wayne Reynolds has a dream, right, and he sees this character, that he wants to put into the next source book, right? Well, he can't, because you're using iconics, right? And when you use iconics, you can't just add, you can't just add a new person, right? Because adding an iconic is a big deal. Basically, you have to watch for, you have to adding an iconic is important because it's going to be used by artists going forward. So using the iconics, you get this benefit of the unity of example, but you also really do get this very distinct disadvantage of limiting the artist, right? Now, so that lends the question, which is better, right? Is it better to do what they're doing in 5th edition now and allow your artist to dream up new characters and put them in there, and to be able to say to your artist, I want a fighter here, and you're going to get a really unique and special surprise when your artist brings forward this incredibly unique and innovative fighter? Or is it better to say, hey, I want Tordek here, right, and know what you're going to get? And for the designers of the visual images, also, by the way, when you use iconics, the art has a much, much higher chance of actually matching the rules, right? That's a very, very big advantage of iconics as well, right? So basically, which is better? Which is a better approach? Well, here's the J. Scott Garibay answer. Iconics are better. I love iconics. I think it's a better way to go. I think it allows the characters to match the rules more carefully. I think the unity of example is worth more than the artistic freedom, right? However, I will say right now, I think my preference would not sell more books, right? Art sells tabletop role-playing games, and so when the artists have more freedom, so my path is better, I think, for unity of example and for tabletop role-playing game design to be more sound and more consistent. But overall, I absolutely would also acknowledge that my choice would actually sell less books, because when you allow your artist to put in whatever crazy dream they had last night, you could get some really stunning visuals, which probably aren't going to match any of the rules of the game, right? So that's my answer. I think iconics are better, and I also am very, very thankful that Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 used these iconic characters. I think it's really unique and special, and it's a wonderful thing that's there, and it's part of our Dungeons & Dragons history, right? All of that is my opinion. I'd love to hear your opinion. What do you think? Do you think it's better to use iconics or not use the way they did in 3.5, or not use iconics the way they did in every other edition? Which do you think is better? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.